Welcome. This is Tommy Ruke, and I appreciate you all attending this added webinar concerning the overview of CSA. We have developed this program today because of the basic training we did in Orlando a couple weeks ago. We did not have time to go into the detail of CSA, so I thought that we would share this with everybody, and it would be something that you can use later. The information we're looking at here today is available to everybody. When I teach classes involving this to agents who have never seen SAFER and CSA and those things, they're surprised that this much information is available for the public view. One of the attorney friends that we deal with, Rob Mosley, quotes that a trucker lives in a glass house. And this is exactly what's there, because most anything the motor carrier does wrong on the highway will be noted by a DOT officer, and what the DOT officer observes and notes is available to everybody. Who are the everybody? Obviously insurance providers, and this is becoming a big part of obtaining the insurance for a motor carrier. The motor carrier who has to meet this requirement is any motor carrier or any user of the commercial auto 10,001 GVW or larger. They must obtain a DOT number if they cross state lines. This business is not just an 18-wheeler, just not a 4-hour trucker, not a big risk. Any business that has a vehicle with 6 tires that crosses state lines must have, by federal regulation, a DOT number and also be a part of the Uniform Carrier Registration System. If they have a DOT number, then the information concerning that risk will be in the internet, and this is what we're going to look at. For retail agents, you don't write a commercial auto if the user has a DOT number without checking here the internet first. You also have to make sure that the information obtained from the insured matches what they have told the government. When we look at the actual violations, we need to look at and understand where they come from. These happen when a truck is stopped on the highway. It can be stopped basically in 2 places. A fixed location, which will be noted on the inspection, will be at a weigh station or a port of entry. You all have driven down interstate highways. You have seen these weigh stations, port of entry. If you look closely in the very back of those, there is usually a barn. This is where a lot of the inspections are done back in those barns. There are some inspections that are done on the roadside as the DOT officer sees necessary to pull a driver over to inspect those things. These levels of inspections will be noted on the inspection report we look back later. A level 3 is the basic inspection. It's the driver-only inspection. There we're looking at the driver's license, that they have the medical certificate with them, or a waiver if they have an option waiver. Do they have the driver's record of duty? This is all the hours of service. This is the log situation. Are they wearing their seatbelt? Do they have the vehicle inspection report? That has to be in their vehicle. And if they're hazmat, do they have a requirement? They also note if the driver can speak English well enough to navigate the U.S. highways. This will be noted as a driver only. They'll also look at the bill of lading to make sure that the shipment is documented properly, and the trucker who's hauling that load is the motor carrier shown on the bill of lading. This takes about 10 or 15 minutes. It's often done outside of the fixed location on the side of the highway when the DOT officer finds a possible violation. Level 2 is called a walk around, and this is what would be noted on the report. This is everything that the level 1 has, plus the vehicle maintenance, brakes, tires, couplings, mainly tires, inflation of tires. It looks at the safety equipment in the cab itself as far as the fire extinguishers and the triangle safety. It looks at the lights to see if they're burning properly, and if they are a flatbed operation or an auto hauler or intermodal, they'll look at the load security. The big item here on the walk around beyond the drivers that we talked about is the lights and the tires. That takes about 35 minutes. A full inspection is a level 1. This is usually done in a place where the officer can find a safe location, mainly in the port of entries or the weigh stations, done in the barns where the DOT officer can get up under the vehicle and look at the bottom side of the vehicle. It contains everything that we talked about at a level 3 driver, a level 2 walk around, and the full one. But this now is bringing involved in the bottom of the vehicle, which would be the brake linings, the brake adjustments, cracked frames, cracked springs, and those items. So those are the 3 levels. This takes about an hour, hour and a quarter to do this. When I look at a risk, just stepping back, and they say they have a lot of level 1 inspections, my concern is what has that driver done to alienate the DOT officer enough to spend an hour with that driver and get dirty. We had one of the DOT officers that was at a program that we did in Orlando a couple of years ago, and somebody from the audience asked them, what level of the inspection do you start with, or how do you determine? And he smiled and said, well, we start with the driver only. If the driver pushes back, then we go to the next level and the next level. Then he smiled and says, and I carry a gun. So the point here is that in these inspections, if the driver respects the DOT officer, if the driver pays attention and is not alienated, they don't usually go all the way to the level 1 of inspections. Let's look at what is on the web. Any motor carrier with a DOT number will have this information. Again, that's anyone with a vehicle 10,001 GVW used in interstate commerce, and there are 32 states where the state requires DOT numbers also. They will be intrastate operations. They will not have as many inspections. They will, depending on their geographical location, they won't be stopped as often. But the majority of the operation or the information concerning their operation will be on the internet. So this is where we start determining, do we have information? Basically is, does the insured have a DOT number? The key web page, the mother web page is SAFER, www.safersystems.org. What you'll find when we first get there is a company snapshot. What I'm going to do in this presentation is I'm going to walk through the mechanics of this. I hope some of y'all have taken time to download this webinar and can follow it with the outline. I think Beth from my office has emailed you all this to start with, because there wasn't a way, or I haven't figured out a way to split the screen where I can do the outline and also go live into the SAFER website, what we're going to do in a few minutes. But so this is just the overview. You can access the information by either the DOT number, the MC number, or the trucker's name. Name is the most difficult one because this system makes you get to the exact name, or at least if they don't have the name, you could put Smith Trucking and you would end up with 100 different trucking companies with the name Smith in it. It will show the location. So clearly the more information you have is the DOT number. There'll be links from there into the FMCSA, into analysis and information, into license and insurance. You might want to make a note that only motor carriers with MC numbers, those are the for-hire carriers hauling processed goods in interstate commerce, will have information in license and insurance. All motor carriers with a DOT number, both for-hire and private, and even risk, again, that have 10,001 GVW or larger, which would be your local furniture store delivery. It could be your local newspaper delivery. It could be delivering to job sites as far as a contractor. They'll have information in the analysis and information part of it. When we look at the company snapshot, this is the overview. The information that you see here has been given to the government by the insured on their MC-150 form. This form is what you fill out to start with to get your original DOT number, and this form must be updated at least every 2 years. The 2-year key to update it is based on the last 2 digits of a DOT number. The second one from the end is the year, even or odd, and the last one is the month. Nobody updates the November, December, and October. Zero is October. We'll go through that later and show you that, but that's the number. This is the information that the insured puts in here that we can access and know about their operation. The key part here from an underwriting standpoint basically is the number of units, the number of miles, and what's being hauled. In addition to that, we can look at the crashes and the rating, but that will be more detailed later as SMS. Those other three items are not. Numbers of power units, miles, and what's being hauled. If you're a retail agent and you're starting to fill out an application, you must make sure that the information in Snapshot matches the information that's on your application. If it's not, you will not be successful in getting the risk written, and you will, if it's for some reason legitimately has a discrepancy or a difference in it, then that needs to be sent to the underwriters with a narrative of why those differences are there. But again, we'll look in more depth in a snapshot in a minute. License and insurance, these are again motor carriers with MC numbers only. Only carriers that have filed for this authority to haul processed goods in interstate commerce. They can register by common, contract, or brokerage. This is being changed as we speak. If you all have seen a blog that I did about a month ago, you'll know that the Uniform Carrier Registration System is being completed, and as a part of the projections in that is, very frankly, MC numbers will go away. Second part of it is the common and contract carrier will only be noted in the future as a carrier. And brokerage, if you've got the latest blogs that I put out, brokerage is a concern too. Just to make a note, basically back on the blog that I did last week concerning brokers, if you look at the website and you see that your insured has common and or contract authority and brokerage authority, you will know that that motor carrier has that in the same MC number, meaning under the same number. Starting in October 1st of this year, that cannot exist anymore. You can either be a motor carrier providing transportation or you can be a broker. You have to have two DOT numbers if you have two separate operations. So the change in that you will find as we progress into October that will change. It'll also show who the current insurance carrier is. That's based on the 91X filing, who made that filing. It'll show the date that that filing was made. And since most policies are written in a year, basically we assume that the insurance renews a year from the filing date. It also shows you the past insurance companies and what kind of authority history, meaning did they have any lapse in it, did they used to be a broker, and those kind of things. That's what you find in license and insurance. Analysis information, and again, that's online. You access it through Safer. This is where you find information concerning CSA and SMS, the safety measurement system. That we're going into some detail later. But when we look into the CSA, it's broken down into the basic. And this is a key concern we have, and that is what the term basic means. Behavior, analysis, and safety improvement categories. There's been a lot of discussion about this. There's been a lot of press here. In fact, one of the blogs that I did at the end of the year was that the CSA and the CSA scores are now the most important thing in a motor carrier's life based on the motor carrier in 2012. It's not understood by all. The government is saying, basically, based on this title, is that what they're doing is looking at the motor carrier's behavior on the roadside as they run up and down the highway, how the driver is operating and how much control the motor carrier has of the driver. They're seeing if those activities could cause a potential crash, and if they do, for them to improve that their operation before the crash happens. This is the whole part of this, to look at the activities of motor carrier and have them improve before the crash. The 7 basics are unsafe driving, hours of service, driver fitness, controlled substance, vehicle maintenance, hazardous material, and crash indicators. You'll find later when we get in the website that the change that was made in December of last year was that it used to be load security where you see hazardous material. That is not there anymore. The load security is now a part of vehicle maintenance, and the hazardous material is a new category. Also, you'll note that hours of service compliance has been changed. It used to be called fatigue, and now it's called hours of service. The most misnamed one of these categories is driver fitness. It has nothing to do with the weight of the driver or the shape of the driver or the physical condition. It has to do with their ability to drive. When these terms first came out, there was a lot of discussion from the drivers themselves because, as you know, they have nobody to talk to on the CB, or they sit around in restaurants and they're worried about they're losing their ability to be a commercial driver if they're too fat. Well, that is not what driver fitness means. We'll go into more detail later. Based on these roadside activities, they are put into a peer group. The peer group has 2 basics. The first one is the number of units and miles for unsafe driving and crashes. And the second peer group would be relevant inspections for all others. That's one of the problems with this, is the peer group is not really their peer. A percentage you see is how their activities react to the basic on the peers. The problem here, because when we think of peer groups, a lot of us go back to our school days or our children's school days, and this is one of the problems here. The first problem you have here is that 0 is good, 100 is bad, which is this opposite of what your kids' grades are that we hope. The second thing is, and this is what's not understood by a lot of people, mainly our lawyers and friends who are attacking the system, is that this is not a measurement of safety. This is a comparison of the activities of your motor carrier with other motor carriers within these peer groups. And we'll talk a little bit more about the problems with the peer groups later. But the example that we use when we have these presentations that some of you have heard me go is that if you, like your child, if your child moves from one school district to another school district, they have changed peer groups so they can answer the test questions the exact same way they did in the first location, and now they're with a second location, a second school district, or a second state. They could have a different rating within their peer group even though they're operating exactly the same. This is not a measurement, absolute measurement of safety. It's a comparison of how their activities are with their peer groups. However, it does trigger an intervention threshold. When the motor carrier gets over a certain level, then the government steps in and starts suggesting that they improve and forcing them to approve. The percentage is for unsafe driving, fatigue driving, or hours of service, and crashes is 65%. All others are 80%. We'll look more later. The first intervention is a warning letter. When they get the warning letter, they tell the risk that they're going to increase their inspections. They'll also tell them that if they don't improve, they'll get a phone call to discuss certain items. If they still don't improve, they will be visited at a location looking at a specific area they're doing wrong. Or if they don't improve after those things, they'll have a full compliance audit at their location. This is the intervention level. Again, all this will be available later for you, and we'll show you what's there. We're going to look now at SAFER, and we'll look through this, and we'll come back and summarize it. As y'all hopefully familiar with, that involved in SAFER, there is a couple things here that you might not have seen. First off, a lot of your insureds do not have PIN numbers. One of the things that we have to do for the PIN number, it gives us ability to update their 150. It also gives them data that we don't have. Later, when we look at the actual SMS results and the scoring, we do not see the driver's names. If we had the motor carrier's PIN number, we would know the driver's name. So it's very important that they have a PIN number, and retail agents, when you deal with an insured involved in this is the first thing you need to ask them is, do they have a PIN number? For you to not know how to do it, you can contact our office here, and Beth has a outline exactly how to help your insureds get the PIN number. The one bad thing about PIN numbers, and it says up here 3 lines above that, is you must have the credit card number that you use to pay your fees with. A lot of risks do not want to give, or motor carriers do not want to give their credit card number, but the government is using that as a means of ID. Again, it's the government. I'm not saying that's good or bad. We're just trying to explain how that works. Down on the bottom, you see the 3 categories we talked about: snapshot, analysis information, and insurance, licensing insurance. One side that we have not looked at, and we don't have time, is if you look at on the right-hand side, the FMCSA homepage, you can go there, and that will tell you or help you find out about any new regs and rules that they have, some of the things that we talked about. To start our looking at, what we want to do is go into the A&I online. This is the home page. One thing we can do that some of you might have looked at before, if you click on Advanced Search, providing my machine is fast enough here, and then click on Advanced Search again, you can then put down here the operation. If you put interstate, for the sake of our discussion, let's put Florida, since that's where I'm located. And we can look at a basic score and look at any here. And let's say, just so we can get a few coming up here, let's put any risk with a score in Florida with any basics over 60%. And it will give us 100 motor carriers that have a rating of over 50%. One of the things that I want to point out with you here is, again, some of the fallacies with the peer group. 2 examples that I have here in front of you is, if you look at the 4th trucker down on this page, they have 9 power units and 27 inspections. The one in Tampa down here has 17 power units and 37 inspections. They would be in the same peer group. There's not a relationship there. But this will give you all the information about any particular risk that you have. And you can click on their DOT number on the left-hand side, and that brings up their individual SMS scores. This one that I pointed out to you does have something unique here that we see. Notice down here on the bottom, it has a orange flag. One of the things that we have used to approach risk is we tell them that they're flagged. Well, literally you can look at that website and see that they're flagged. The reason they're flagged is they have not updated their 150 properly. This risk, with its DOT number that ends in 07, has to update every even July. They updated fine in 2012, but they did not update their vehicle miles. They just update the number of units. Therefore, they're flagged. This is very simple to rectify, because all that you have to do is, with a PIN number, is give this FMCSA on the 150 form the information that will tell you the miles and tell you the number of units. You can update again online. It's not that hard to do. How do I go back, Beth? Anyway, that's where you can get 100 truckers or motor carriers in your area. They won't all be for hire. They won't all be truckers as we know it. What I do want to go from here, though, is to SMS. This is Safety Measurement System. By the way, for you who are taking notes, you'll find that we're tracking my notes here, and we'll go back and review later if we're moving a little fast. But I want to see how to navigate this website. And so if you click on the icon here, this picks up the information you have here. If you look at the right-hand corner, will allow you to review all the contents in a row. There's 18 pages of this information. The first part of this that we find is that's where the enhancements were made in December, and shows you the few changes that were made and are relevant now as they build here. But more important, as we scroll down here on the stops that I put on my outline that I find important, is again the safety, the behavior analysis and safety improvement. This then reiterates the 7 categories and tells you the federal regulation that these categories individually police. It shows you again the operation of the vehicle, meaning speeding, reckless driving, improper lane changes, hours of service, mainly paperwork, but this has to do with you cannot work beyond 11 hours, you cannot drive beyond 11 hours, you cannot drive beyond 14 hours, you have to take a 34-hour break after you've driven 70 hours, things like that. Just for your information, I have just finished putting together a blog that you'll get out tomorrow concerning the new hours of service, which will go into effect July 1st of this year, that you might want to pay attention to because it's going to majorly change in some areas how your insured operates. Again, driver fitness, controlled substance, vehicle maintenance here. One thing that causes some problems in this is that this information is changed monthly. So your insured could be in a favorable situation when you look at it to write it. Let's say you're looking at it 2 months ahead. You go to them, you put the submission together, everything looks hunky-dory. You send the application in, and by the time the underwriter gets and looks at it, they can now have an alert. Because, again, if information, depending on the time you looked at it, has been uploaded, again, at the end of each month, then that will change. That's one of the problems with this. It changes monthly based on the current roadside inspections that they have. Scrolling down, this gives you just a detailed view of what we're talking about with the 7 categories and which all these mean. If they have a triangle, then they have intervention and they will have had a warning letter. We'll look at that warning letter in a few minutes. Notice though here in driver fitness, they have a 0 on road inspection, but they have this little icon that is noted as a serious violation that looks like a pen and pencil. What happens there is that the DOT officer has visited the location and a full compliance audit has been done, and the DOT officer has found something wrong. Most of what they ever found wrong is paperwork. Driver fitness, without speculating here, this could be something like they did not have the proper application by asking the date of birth on the application. They do not have the medical cards of their drivers in the medical folders, things like that. The situation here, though, is if they have an alert due to a serious violation, that alert stays with them a year, even though they have corrected the serious violation. Underwriters and retail agents, if this happens, what's the most important thing here, in my opinion, is what was the serious violation over? And again, if it's like I suggested, paperwork, have the insured change that paperwork? Have we noted that they have corrected what the violations were, and we have that in file? Because even though they're on alert, they could have corrected the problems immediately, which again does not give us any more problems because they have corrected those things. But this is what a retail agent needs to communicate with the insurance underwriters, and I would suggest that the underwriters should use that as a consideration for the ones involved in the serious violations. This explains the percentages and the peer groups here, and then it shows you the thresholds. Again, there is 3 thresholds depending on a passenger, hazmat, and general commodities. Notice passengers and hazmat has a lower percentage than the people who are hauling general freight. And again, as we said earlier, unsafe driving, hours of service compliance, and crashes has a threshold of 65 for the general commodities, and the rest of them have a threshold of 80. The new hazmat also has a threshold of 80, but since people haulers do not carry hazardous material, they do not have a listing on those things. But this, again, gives you the thresholds, and those percentages track back again to the numbers that we looked here earlier. The next thing that you look at here that's important to us is right here where it says SMS methodology and Appendix A violation list. When you get finished with this and you go on Say for Yourself and go through the programs we have here in SMS, it's my strong recommendation that you look at that and punch on this. Because when you do, what you'll get, where is it? Here we go. What you'll get is the 600 violations by categories. Vehicle maintenance, controlled substance, driver fitness, hours of service, unsafe driving. You can punch on every one of those and you get the percentages here of the drivers. There is something here that we pointed on that shows you their speeding and the various percentages of each one of these areas. One thing that we'll talk about later that I want you to note here concerning speeding that we might not think about. Speeding where the DOT officer puts no violations, only a 1. Speeding on interstate highway is a basic speeding is a 5. But notice the penalties of speeding off of the interstate highway, the state and local speeding laws. My question that I ask you here on the audience, has any of y'all gone 61 into 45? The Florida Highway Patrol reminded me of that the other day when I was going to Orlando for a meeting, actually one of these training sessions that we were doing. Folks, that is a 10. 10 is the worst. So it's not governing the vehicle on the highway, because most of the time, even though we see these trucks barreling down the highway at what we perceive as a high speed, and I agree with you that it could be dangerous, where the violations really are the off of the interstate highways. So that's another concern you would have to discuss with your insureds in those areas. But anyway, my strong suggestion is for you to download this, to go in there and find it and download this. As we go through here, the other thing that I want to stop here is on the warning letters. And this gets back to what an intervention is and what's a warning letter. Notice here, you again can click, and this gives you the warning letter itself. And this is what is sending the insurance carriers heartburn. It's when your insureds get the warning letter. The first paragraph in here says this: a review of the motor carrier's safety data shows a lack of compliance with the motor carrier safety regulations and suggests that your safety performance has fallen to an unacceptable level. Think about that being read in front of a jury. Think about how the jury will react to this. This is what we're concerned with. So far, I'm unaware of any court cases where this information was allowed to be in front of a jury. It will happen. I have testified in courts in a number of places as expert witnesses, and some courts will say you cannot put things like this in front of the jury because it's hearsay unless you can find out exactly who authorized the letter. Some other people will say, judges will say, well, whatever the federal government puts up there must be right. So they're looking at these things. Retail agents, here's my suggestion. And underwriters, here's what you need to think about. When your insured get this letter, you need to visit with the insured and come up with a plan so that we can address what the faults were and that they work that plan. Underwriters, you need to find out if they have a plan and be comfortable with that plan. One other thing that says here that causes a problem is that we will, second paragraph down in the sentence, we will continue to evaluate your performance through increased roadside inspections. The government does not want us to have a copy of that plan because they don't care. They're going to stop the trucks more often, so therefore they'll see if they're in compliance or not. One part about this that's a problem is that if I'm a driver and I have a good safety record, can go out and shop my skills at any place. I can't afford to work with a motor carrier that's on an alert, because in the warning letter itself, now I'm going to have a higher chance of being stopped, not because of my activities, but because of the motor carriers being on alert. So therefore, I can't afford to work for that motor carrier. So it does also have a ramification on the ability to obtain drivers. And we all also already know the problems with the insurance and the ability to secure loads. That's basically what I want to show you through the SMS. You can look at the rest of them, but let's look at an individual risk. So let's go back to the SAFER. Beth, can you get me back to SAFER itself? Let's go back a couple pages, okay? One more, two more. Okay. Let's look at a snapshot. I think we get there. For you who are in our training class in Orlando, or will be in a training class in Orlando, this is the risk that I have in the book that is provided at the seminar. And so we'll just use this one. And again, just pointing out a few things that I find interesting here that I look at. Again, you got the name and address, where they're located. This tells you the number of power units, 16, and the number of drivers, 15, and it talks about the miles. Again, what most underwriters are looking for is about 120,000 to 140,000 miles a year per vehicle. And when you look at the 16 and divide that, that number is about where it's within the norm. It also shows you if they all authorized and exempt commodities. Remember now, they got 16 power units, and this is down here what they haul. This also shows you the numbers of inspections they've had over 2 years. This is a 2-year period of time, 24-month period of time. We'll get more details in inspections. It also shows you the number of crashes they had. Notice the FMCSA does not call them accidents. They're crashes. Just briefly, so you understand what those crashes mean, if it's a fatality, that means that somebody got killed. If it's shown as an injury, that means bodily injury had to be performed away from the accident site. And if it's towed, that means one or more of the vehicles had to be towed away from the accident site or the crash site. Let me also let you know right now, this does not show any elevation of fault. This is just the crash itself. This is a big controversy today with the scores and CSA and SMS. It's being fought by the American Trucking Association and others that that's unfair. Why should I show a crash when I have not been involved? It was not my fault. The landmark or the example used here is our friend Greg Fury, who's out of Indianapolis, who's done presentation. He told of a trucker who was in a motel room, sound asleep, and his truck was parked in the parking lot and was parked legally in the parking lot where it should have been parked. And someone ran off the highway and ran under that trailer and killed themselves, and it showed on his record as a crash, well, a fatality. Well, and by the way, he had to be drug tested because of that, and obviously there was nothing he could have done about it. So this is the kind of cases that the American Trucking Association is bringing forward to try to have those crashes changed, so there will be some evaluation of fault at the time of the report. That's the problem. We have all seen too many court cases who later we find fault that we don't know going in. So that's the discussion you need to be aware of. One of the other things that you might not have noticed is that also, this is recent, this is in the last 3 months, you also have Canadian inspections here too. So this is also for the risk that runs into Canada, or Canadian risks that run into the U.S. is shown there. The last thing I want to show here is the safety rating. Notice this rating was current as of today, but it was done with an inspection in 2010. And The compliance review means that they were an on-site visit, and this rating is conditional. This is what is being controverted now and is supposed to be changed as of the end of this year. When I say that, I have been promised by Inferi personally 2 years ago that it would have been done last year, and it's being put off. This rating has to do with the on-site inspections, and it's what the officer finds when they're there. It can be 2 years old, it can be 20 years old. You'll see, if some of you are familiar with this, there'll be 4 ratings. Unrated means they have not had a visit or have not had a full compliance visit. It could be satisfactory, conditional, unsatisfactory. Those are the conditional ratings. The last part of the CSA is to have a safety fitness determination based on roadside inspection. And the director has promised that they'll come up with a rating based on absolute safety measurement, not the percentage. That's what's being put off. At that point, there will be more accurate of the current operation of a motor carrier based on these this safety fitness determination. Again, you can look here and pinch on license and insurance. And at this point, only people here with license insurance are people with MC numbers, so don't forget that. You can find out what kind of authority they had. They used to have broker's authority. They don't have it anymore. They're a contract carrier. This is the insurance required and insurance on file. If you all have been to our basic classes, it's my strong recommendation to show what is required, not what the policy limit is. And in this case, this is probably what is being shown here. If you ask or have these questions, again, on our webinars, on our basic training, we have letters that are there to explain to your insured why this is shown and what's required. This gets them legal. This doesn't have anything to do with the dollars that they have available at crash time. Those are the limits on the policy. We can come here and find out who their active insurance carrier is, and I don't know who this is, so please don't. It's Wilshire Insurance Company, and it was just placed 2 days ago. Effective just 2 days ago, or 4 days ago. So this is a current filing made. You can also look at their insurance history and find out who their previous carriers were. And so this is the information that you found here. We can go back here. I was going to show you one other thing here. This question gets asked often. A BOC3. This is a processing service. It recognizes that a for-hire trucker will be in many states, and if an accident happens in the state that's not their state of domicile, then there needs to be some ability for the citizens of those states to file court papers with that motor carrier. And so the motor carrier must, and there's a number of processing companies around. It's very cheap, but you have to become a part of this consortium who will do this processing for you, and that's what you have to complete as a part of the process. The last thing we look in here is the MS results. This gets to the individual risk. And again, they have 3 alerts. For you who have the material in my book, when we first did this, it had 4 alerts, and because again, it changes on a monthly basis. A couple things here that are interesting is that, for example, we pick out and we punch on the hours of service violations here. And I'll go in more detail here, but what I want to show you is notice that these reports are underlined. So we can click on that and get the exact report, which for our information shows the vehicle serial numbers. So we can find even the vehicle serial numbers, the make, model, and the vehicle serial numbers, and can print those off. By the way, this is a driver-only inspection. Excuse me, Beth. Okay. We can go back also. Another thing you can do here from this page is look at the history. think you can at least. And this shows if they're getting better or not. I don't like monthly here, but you can click on here, and I kind of like semi-annually because then you go back and see if they got 4 years, what kind of improvement they have made. Again, the one that we had before had this driver fitness that now they did not have a rating in that category that would happen before. One other thing that can be done here, this risk has 4 crashes. This gives you the crash detail. And one of the things that can show on the crash detail is what's shown here is everything about the driver. I mean, everything about the age of the driver, but not the driver name. Neither one of these reports show the driver name. If we had the motor carrier's PIN number, then the driver's name would also be shown to us. One other thing here that you need to note is on this crash report, it shows that they had a citation. This is major concern here because the obtaining a citation or not will depend if the driver needs a post-crash drug test or not. And that's an important consideration here. The FMCSA drug testing rules, and I would encourage you to look at those, say that if it's a fatality, then I must be drug tested for alcohol within 12 hours, 8 hours, and other substances within 32 hours. If I have a towed or a bodily injury crash and I have a citation, I also have to be drug tested. And so that triggers on the accident report if it's a citation or not. What I like to do in this is instead of going to the individual, and the difference here is where I'm going here will print them all, but you cannot go to the individual reports by printing them all on the overview. So in this case, if you, I'm sorry, we got to go back up to the overview. And here you can print printable measurable profile. This gives you all of them in a rolling calendar. Okay. What did I do, Beth? Here we go. And so this is the same information, it's just more accurate. One thing involved here, notice in this it types the vehicle types in the breakdown. A couple things here that will tell us. Notice that they have trip leases, which means that they're using vehicles as, term lease, excuse me. They're using vehicles that they don't own, which in most cases will be owner-operators. There could be a financial leases cases like with PACCAR or GMAC financing. But if you're a retail agent or wholesaler, you know they have vehicles they don't own as a part of their operation, which means that you have to add an endorsement onto the policies to properly cover the owners of those vehicles. Or if you write it on a specified auto basis, or if you have the motor carriers form, it would depend on the leasing, the contract between the owner-operator and that motor carrier. But again, this gives us an idea if they in fact have vehicles they don't own. We can go down and look at every one of their violations and what's happened in violation. This again is the unsafe driving, speeding, lights, those kind of things. Notice in this case where they had a speeding in the third category of over 15 miles an hour was a 10. One thing about this system is it's fairly or it's immediate operation, not long term. Notice in this column here you have the time weightingness, and if the violation is 6 months old, then it has a valuation of 3. If it's 6 months to 12 months, it has a valuation of 2. If it's over 12 months, it has a time valuation of 1. So if insured cleans up their operation and does not have any violations within 6 months, then their whole scoring will go down by at least a third, if not completely dropped off. So it has a lot of self-fulfilling part of it here that you would need to look at. This is the hours of service violations. And again, I want to point out another difference here that you need to be aware of. There's 2 different violations. If you see here non-OSS, those are they're violations, but they do not put the vehicle out of service. This means that whatever they found has to be corrected at that site immediately and or corrected if it's a maintenance situation at the next available before the next trip can be taken. However, if it is an out-of-service violation, which is an OOS, two things happen. First off, that vehicle must be corrected, or that violation must be corrected before the vehicle can move. And second is that there is another 2 points added to the valuation. If the valuation is 0 to 10 and you add 2 points, that means you increase the severity by 20%. So these are the out-of-service violations, which means they have to be corrected before the vehicle can be moved. Non-out-of-service violations, they can be corrected at the next available place to be corrected. If you look down here where you have item 16, requirement of permitting driver to drive over 14 hours, they're out of service. To correct that, or the one above that, to correct that, that means the driver has to stay there for 10 hours because that's the only way they can recycle their 14-hour ability to work. So that is the concern in those areas. And then you can look at each one. It gives you individual history. This is the driver fitness. Notice there's no percentage, but you still have violations here. So you would look at these and look at the ones here, and these, again, have some out-of-service violations. This is operating a commercial motor vehicle without a CDL and driving CDL while disqualified. Major concern for both of those things if I'm an insurance carrier or a retail agent. Again, the problem here is that this is licensed in the state of North Carolina. The inspection was in Maryland. So they have a driver in that vehicle that does not have a proper CDL. That means that vehicle has to stay there until the motor carrier sends another driver to drive that unit that's qualified. Because remember, the only people who can drive a commercial motor vehicle with my DOT number on the side of it is an employee of mine that I have properly screened. I can't just get someone off the street to bring the truck home. So that's a problem in these areas, using drivers who don't have the proper CDLs, who have them disqualified, don't speak English, or some of those kind of things. I don't worry about the medical certificates. Again, that's a concern, but not one that would give us a concern from being immediately corrected. What you got to worry about is the drivers who are disqualified. The controlled substance, again, they had one use, then no rating, but they did have the possession of alcohol in one of those, which is an out-of-service violation. Again, no tolerance for drinking at all. This was an April risk. This is the vehicle maintenance concern in the whole series of these. It shows all the various areas of the maintenance. This shows the inspection history. Again, if you look at the out-of-service violations, this is where they have a flat tire. This means that they cannot move that vehicle until they put a new tire on it. Down here, this is a defective brake system. Again, and again, another flat tire exposed. They cannot move that vehicle until they have a tire brought to them. Again, this risk was a North Carolina domiciled risk. They have an accident in Maryland, so they'll have to call a tire company to be strange to them, or a record company to come out and make those changes. Anyway, this will give you the whole detail involved in it, and it will show you the SMS scores that we have. Beth, let's go back to the outline then. So just in conclusion, because we want to get out of here in an hour, what I look for starting here with let's look at the web. We give you the web addresses that we looked at and the various stops I made with a indication of what we have done. And what to look at on the pages where you can find about the basics. And then the points that I stopped at about what the basics were, how the categories are set up, what's the percentage, the threshold interventions, the violation listing, and a copy of the warning letter. I went into the SAFER and came up with a snapshot and talked about who the carrier is. Then we looked at their SMS scores. and we reviewed those things and went on the orange where we can print the measurement profile, and then we looked at the various things. Now, here is a summation of this. There is a category, the SMS is the Motor Carrier Safety Measurement System. That's a 24-month system. The DSMS, that's the Driver Safety Measurement System. That's a 36. What you need to be aware of is that every time the truck gets stopped and is cited for a violation under the DOT number, the motor carrier is cited, but so is the driver. And as a part of the employment process, the driver's history in driving a truck can be accessed by the PSP scores. Then we do the basic 7, and again remind you that 0 is the best, 100% is the worst, and we show you again the time valuation where in the 3 months, 2 and 1, the 3 points for 1 to 6, notice the drivers is 1 to 12, so it's a longer category in those areas. We give you some additional information that we have here that will show you how to keep abreast of this stuff, and so you can get some detail on these regulations. Additional resources. I wrote a white paper a number of months ago that's dealing with the pain that suggests for the smaller motor carrier how to get the DOT officer not to notice them on the highway. It's very simple to explain to them, and it's even simpler than that. Just drive within the speed limit, operate your vehicle within the state laws, and make sure all your lights burn, and you'll probably not get stopped. But that's something you can share with your insureds. The last page here is that if you looking at retail agents here, you can find everything you know about the insured based on what's already on the web. When you approach the insured, you don't ask who they are, you ask for verification. Is this the right person? You want to make sure the information on the application matches the public information. You need to share with your insured what is there available. Some of them don't know this, and you might want to help them update their 150 report if they're flagged, and also address any problems with the warning letters. That's the end of this. I hope that you use this later for your information here. We go in more detail, and there's a lot of changes in this area that we've alluded to here. At the just announced, and everybody should have the paperwork this week on the annual conference that will be held in Orlando. We'll go in more depth here, and we also have just put the curriculum together for an advanced underwriting, 16 hours. That will, again, will go into more depth. This is meant only to be an overview of this process, and we hope that this will be useful to you. We appreciate you all being a part of our program. We look forward to helping you. If you have any questions, please send them through the Ask Tommy through our website, and we'll get back with you on this. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll have it out within an hour. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.